What in the world is happening in the world of real estate? Well, let me tell you. Hi, I'm Jamie Thompson with Remax Precision, and my husband and I, Justin, are Jamie Thompson Real Estate with Remax Precision. We serve the Des Moines Metro market in real estate, and let me tell you about some changes that are happening. So in the fall of 2023, there was a big lawsuit in Missouri against the National Association of Realtors and many companies regarding collusion and violating antitrust laws. The basics of it were some sellers sued thinking that were colluding and had a standard rate of commission, which was inflating prices and violating antitrust laws. So you can go Google the details of this lawsuit. I don't want to get into that. I just want to get into how it will affect you as a consumer and what changes are coming down the pipeline. So first and foremost, the biggest change that will have an effect on you, whether you buy a house today or 10 years from now, is that buyer brokerage agreements will be mandatory. And what that means is when you go to sell your house, you sign a contract with the listing agent to sell that house. Well, now buyers will be required to sign an agreement when they go to buy a house. These agreements have been in place since the late 80s, early 90s, and actually came about because back then a buyer would have to go to a listing agent, and they just didn't think that was fair, that a buyer needed their own representation, which is kind of funny because I feel like we're going backwards a little bit, but that's okay. So we're signing these agreements. They are going to be mandatory. In Iowa, they are a law already as of July 1st. Which means anytime that you look at a house, step foot in a house with an agent, you have to have a contract signed with that agent. Now, don't worry, we've got a ton of questions. Open houses do not apply to this. You can still go and come as you please at an open house. But anytime you have an agent show you a house, whether it's a listing agent or one you would like to hire until you are completed through the purchase, you need a contract signed. Now, agents have been using these forms since I've been in the business the last 20 years. We have just never made it a permanent place in our buyer's packet, but they have been around. So what this entails and what the whole lawsuit was about, that it needs to be more transparent. Sellers said that they weren't aware that they didn't have to pay a buyer's agent the commission, which you do not have to. And that was part of the lawsuit. So this, having buyers sign this buyer brokerage agreement now is a little more transparent. In it, it goes over who represents who. It goes over how much I am charging you as a buyer and as your agent, what that is and where it is coming from. So the whole point of this, the National Association of Realtors settling this lawsuit, this was one of the things that came out of it, is they just want it to be more transparent for buyers. Now, where the argument has came in is that, is this really helping buyers? The transparency, yes, but some of the other things that go along with it, maybe not so much. So in my 20 years of experience, we charge a percentage to our sellers to sell their house. That is a figure that we charge. It is no standard. Certain brokerages may have requirements of their own agents on what they can charge or how they cooperate with buyers agents. But we charge what we charge, and then we advise our seller that, hey, we really recommend that you give this much of it, offer it to buyers agents compensation, so that we're getting all the buyers in your property who want to buy it, and that their agents are compensated for that effort. So now in the buyer agency agreement, all of this is spelled out. It spells out how long you're working with your agent, what they're charging you, how that's getting paid, what happens if a seller doesn't offer compensation, and how they're going to get that compensation. Now, we can all agree that no one's working for free, right? So unfortunately, this is just going to be maybe some tougher conversations for people. And to be honest, some buyers aren't going to have the money to pay buyers agents, and those agents will have to cross that bridge when they get there. I can only speak on how we do business and how we will continue to do business. And that is, we will continue to do it as we always have. We'll continue to show you all the properties you want to see unless you tell us otherwise. We've done this forever, right? So for sale by owners, don't always offer us compensation. Sometimes they'll let us bring clients through and are willing to pay us. Sometimes that compensation may not be what we charge, and we have to work out with our buyer on where that difference is coming from. And so these are all things that are negotiable. So that is going to be the biggest factor that affects you as a consumer, because in our experience, we have people who think about buying houses all the time. And if we know you and we have shown you houses before, maybe it just didn't work out, or maybe you're just tinkering around with, hey, I kind of want to move up to the next house. What is out there for me? And we're like, hey, let's go take a look at a few. Well, now we can still do that. We just have to have a contract signed. Even if you have no intention on purchasing right now, but want to look at something, if it's not an open house, there has to be a contract signed. That law, the Iowa Real Estate Transparency Act, went into effect on July 1st. So in Iowa, if you look at a house and someone's telling you, oh, I don't need you to sign that, they do. It's a law. And the other thing is to protect yourself when you hire your agent. Now, even if you call a sign in front of a listing, which we don't recommend doing, why don't you want your own representation? Why don't you want someone fighting for you to get the best deal? Anyways, that's a whole nother conversation. But even if you call the sign to get in a house, you have to sign an agreement with that agent. If that's the only house you want them to show you, then you put that address in there. You make sure that the date is either for a day, a time, a week. If you meet a new agent and you're just not sure if you're going to mesh well, maybe ask for a reduced span of contract time. So these contracts you can sign that are good up for a year, which we will probably sign with some clients who are moving into town, just getting to know the area. There's going to be certain situations that require different timelines. You could sign for, like I said, a specific property, a specific time, or it can be signed up for a year. And you're going to want to make sure that you don't sign one with one agent and sign one with another agent, because that's against the law too. You can only have these contracts in place with one agent at a time. So that's going to be the biggest effect on the consumer. The other thing that kind of affects a seller a little more is they have now required, going as of August 17th, that we have to pull compensation, cooperative compensation off our multiple listing service, our MLS. What that means is back in the 80s and 90s, when they decided it'd be in buyers' best interest to have their own agents and for us to cooperate and pay those agents, it was put on our MLS. So I, as a buyer's agent, could go look at a property and say, hey, I'm showing you this property. They're paying me this much percent, or this is what they're paying me, and have that conversation with my buyer on if that covered it. But we would know what they were paying us because of that. That is like an agent-to-agent website. There's no consumers on that website. Now we have to take that off. We can no longer put it on that avenue. We can put it on our personal websites, or we're just going to have to call every agent to see what kind of compensation there is. Again, we can't work for free. So know that your agent's going to have to do a little more work on the back end and then have those conversations with you as a buyer if it will work, if you want to continue to go see it. So in some cases, a buyer could tell me, hey, I don't want to look at anything that's not paying you X percent what you charge. Or I only want to see it if it's paying X percent. So keep in mind that those things will happen. And as a seller, you just want to be cooperative with your agent. It's now going to be listed out on our listing agreements a little more clear on what is going to us. And if you are willing to cooperate and pay or compensate a buyer's agent, it will be very transparent and clear on there on the document on what that is. And there's just going to be more documentation to fill out. We have forms that we can send buyer's agents. Again, we can put it on our website. Those are the two biggest things that will affect where this lawsuit came out. There's still things happening with the DOJ in it, but for a majority of it, it is just going into effect mid-August. And like I said, I was a little ahead of the game, and we put these rules into effect as of July 1st, rules and laws. So if you ever have any questions about what this means for you as a consumer, or what's happening in the national level of real estate or locally, of course, we are here to help you and would love to be your real estate resource. So if you have not liked our page, make sure you hit subscribe so that you're notified anytime that we have an update, and we will keep you up to date as these rules progress.